The plane touched down in Manila, and she peered out the window. A beautiful Ukrainian woman in her late 20s with bright blue eyes that reflected both curiosity and skepticism. She had heard it all before, stories about the Philippines as a small, poor country, riddled with traffic, typhoons, and poverty. It was the kind of place where she was expected to see crumbling streets and unkempt buildings, a land where life was hard and opportunities were scarce. She had arrived with a mixture of trepidation and excitement, her luggage neatly packed with essentials and her heart brimming with wanderlust. The moment she stepped out of the airport, she was greeted not with chaos, but with smiles. People waved politely, offered directions, and even joked with her, their English crisp and easy to understand. She blinked in surprise. Her expectations of a grim, struggling nation were already being challenged within the first 5 minutes. As she walked along the streets of Manila, the contrast was immediately striking. The bustling city hum of jeeps and motorcycles was punctuated by gleaming skyscrapers, shopping malls, and vibrant coffee shops where young Filipinos typed on laptops and sipped fraps. It was a city alive with energy, a place where modernity and tradition coexisted in ways she had not anticipated. The beauty wasn't in perfection, but in the unexpected harmony of life, chaos, and warmth. Street vendors called out cheerfully, children laughed in the playgrounds, and somewhere in the distance, a choir of car horns and laughter created a symphony that felt uniquely Filipino. She felt her skepticism melting into fascination, her preconceived notions crumbling like sandcastles against the tide of reality. Her first real encounter with the archipelago's natural beauty came days later when she boarded a small propeller plane to visit Palawan. From above, the island stretched endlessly like emerald jewels scattered across turquoise waters. The white sand beaches gleamed in the sunlight, and the water was so clear that she could see schools of fish darting beneath the surface. It was surreal. No photos, no travel blogs she had seen back home in Ukraine could capture the scale of it. The way the sunlight danced on the waves, or the gentle sway of palm trees against a backdrop of mountains. She remembered muttering to herself, "This isn't the country I was told about. This is paradise." She laughed softly, feeling almost guilty for having doubted a place so full of life and wonder. Beyond the beaches, the surprises continued. She hiked the trails that led to the chocolate hills in Bohol, their perfectly cone-shaped mounds stretching as far as the eye could see. She marveled at the Banawe rice terraces, centuries-old engineering feats carved into the mountainsides, a living testament to Filipino ingenuity and dedication. She had studied European landscapes all her life, seen mountains, rivers, and forests, yet there was something uniquely human about these terraces. They were not only beautiful but functional, a marriage of art and sustenance. She took photos compulsively, but each snapshot felt inadequate. The view could not be fully captured. It had to be felt. The warmth of the Filipino people struck her even more than the natural wonders. Everywhere she went, she was met with generosity. At a small local market, a vendor insisted she try a freshly baked pan de sal, offering a warm, fluffy roll along with a glass of iced tea. "Welcome, welcome," the elderly woman said with a smile that reached her eyes. When she hesitated, unsure of etiquette, the vendor laughed kindly, patting her shoulder. She felt like a guest of honor in someone else's home rather than a tourist in a foreign land. She found herself reflecting on how different this was from her experiences in Europe, where politeness often came with distance, and kindness was measured. In the Philippines, generosity and warmth were unmeasured, free, and instinctive. She ventured into rural communities, where houses were simple, some made of bamboo and nipa, others of concrete, yet the people's laughter and openness were richer than any mansion she had ever seen. Children ran to greet her with wide-eyed curiosity, and neighbors invited her in for snacks without hesitation. She observed how families gathered together, the older generation teaching the younger, everyone participating in daily chores, yet laughing as they worked. In Ukraine, family life was important but often formal, sometimes emotionally distant. Here, family was immersive, vibrant, and immediate. She felt a tug in her heart, a growing admiration for the sense of belonging that seemed so effortless here. She also noticed how Filipinos managed to remain joyful despite challenges. News of natural disasters, typhoons, earthquakes, floods, was never far from her awareness. Yet in every community she visited, she saw resilience rather than despair. Homes were repaired, businesses reopened, and people continued to smile. Children played amid rubble, mothers cooked and shared meals, and neighbors checked on each other. The contrast to the grim European news coverage she was used to was stark. She realized that the poor country label was superficial, a misunderstanding of values. Wealth here wasn't measured solely in money. It was in connection, care, and community. As she learned more about the country's language, she discovered how English proficiency made communication effortless. Even in small towns, people could explain directions, offer suggestions, and tell stories in clear, fluent English. She marveled at the education system that had enabled such a high level of English fluency without erasing the beautiful complexity of native languages like Tagalog, Cebuano, and Ilocano. The blend of languages made conversation playful, fluid, and sometimes unintentionally funny when words collided in translation. She laughed often, realizing that humor here was intertwined with daily life and communication, a bridge across cultures. Modernity also impressed her. In cities like Manila, Cebu, and Davao, she saw tech-savvy professionals using the latest gadgets, thriving startups, and business districts with polished buildings. The Philippines was not frozen in time. It was moving forward, adapting, and innovating. She met young entrepreneurs who had studied abroad, yet returned home to invest in local businesses. She dined at restaurants run by chefs trained internationally, tasted dishes that fused traditional flavors with contemporary flair, and observed the energy of urban markets where fresh produce, seafood, and handmade goods coexisted. For someone who expected a country stuck in hardship, this was a revelation. Her days were filled with exploration, but the nights brought reflection. She sat on a beach under a sky of stars so bright it almost hurt to look at, the waves whispering secrets to the sand. She thought about how quickly her impressions had changed, how assumptions based on hearsay had melted away. She realized that the true wealth of the Philippines lay not in skyscrapers or currency, but in people, their resilience, warmth, humor, and kindness. Here was a society that survived and thrived on connection, empathy, and joy. She felt a pang of humility, recognizing how easily she had underestimated a nation. In the last week of her stay, she attended a small-town festival, complete with colorful decorations, parades, and music that vibrated through the streets. She joined locals in traditional dances, tried foods she could not even name, and laughed as children tugged at her hair or tried to teach her Tagalog phrases. She marveled at how life here embraced imperfection and celebrated togetherness. Unlike the polished, orderly festivals she had experienced in Europe, this was alive, raw, and heartfelt. It was messy in the most beautiful way. By the end of her trip, the beautiful Ukrainian woman was transformed. She had arrived with doubt, caution, and prejudice, only to discover a country that defied stereotypes at every turn. She saw the Philippines' small size as inconsequential compared to the vastness of its heart. She understood that economic labels could never capture the richness of its people, their culture, and their approach to life. The initial shock she felt in the first 5 minutes upon arrival had grown into admiration, gratitude, and love for a place she had never expected to call home, even if only temporarily. Her final thought as she boarded her flight back to Europe was one of awe. The Philippines was a land of contradictions, yes, but within those contradictions lay beauty, laughter, resilience, and a depth of humanity that surpassed any preconceived notion. She knew she would carry this experience forever, a reminder that appearances and hearsay often hid the most extraordinary truths. The country she had dismissed in her mind as small and poor had, in just a few minutes, stunned her in surprise. And in the weeks that followed, it had completely won her heart. After the plane ride from Manila, she stepped off into the quiet serenity of a rural town in the Visayas. The contrast to the bustling city she had just left was striking. Rolling hills stretched in every direction, dotted with coconut trees swaying gently in the breeze. Rice paddies glimmered with the reflection of the morning sun, and small nipa huts lined the roadsides. The air was thick with the scent of freshly tilled soil and tropical flowers, mingling with the faint aroma of cooking fires. She breathed deeply, savoring the raw beauty of the countryside, realizing immediately that this was a side of the Philippines few visitors ever truly saw. Her arrival caused a flurry of curiosity among the locals. Children peered from behind their parents' legs, whispering and giggling in awe of the foreign woman who looked like she had stepped out of a magazine. Her long blonde hair caught the sunlight, her blue eyes scanning the landscape with wonder, and the villagers were charmed by her unguarded excitement. Unlike the reserved approach of city dwellers here in the rural town, people approached her openly, offering greetings, smiles, and invitations to share meals. She was initially hesitant, unsure of the customs, but she quickly realized that politeness here was not formal. It was a warm, genuine extension of hospitality. The first morning, she accompanied a family to their rice fields. She watched in awe as they worked together with efficiency, laughter, and care. The men plowed and planted while the women carefully tended the seedlings, passing buckets of water and sharing tips passed down through generations. She attempted to help, fumbling with the tools and tripping over the uneven terrain, which caused bursts of laughter from the children who had followed along. They called her Ate with reverence and amusement, a term of respect that made her heart swell with affection for these people. Lunch was served under a makeshift bamboo shelter. She was offered freshly cooked rice, fish grilled over open flames, and local vegetables sautéed with coconut milk. She had never tasted anything quite like it. The flavors were intense yet comforting, a perfect balance of sweet, salty, and earthy notes. She had eaten Filipino food in Manila, but this was different. Home-cooked, genuine, imbued with the care of people who had grown it and prepared it themselves. She learned about the concept of pakikipagkapwa, the Filipino value of treating others as part of your extended family, and she felt it in every shared bite, every smile exchanged. She laughed at herself when she tried to imitate the family's local dialect, mangling words in ways that left the children doubled over with giggles. As the afternoon sun climbed high, she joined in a traditional basket weaving session. The elderly women of the village guided her hands patiently, showing her how to intertwine bamboo and rattan strands with precision. Her attempts were clumsy, but the women laughed with her, not at her. They shared stories about their own childhoods, weaving memories and lessons into the fibers of the baskets, and she listened, captivated. She realized that every tradition she witnessed was more than just a custom. It was a living archive of culture, resilience, and identity. She felt privileged to participate, even imperfectly, and it stirred an unexpected sense of belonging. By evening, she was invited to a small fiesta celebrating a local harvest. Colorful banners and lanterns lined the streets, and the air was thick with the scent of roasted meats, fried snacks, and sweet delicacies like bibingka and puto. Music blared from makeshift speakers, and children danced in improvised routines while elders sang traditional songs. She felt hesitant at first to join, but a group of young women took her hand and pulled her into the circle. She tried to follow the choreography, laughing as she misstepped, only to be gently corrected with encouraging smiles. The locals applauded each small victory, and she realized that the celebration wasn't about perfection. It was about participation, community, and joy. Later, she walked through the village under a sky painted with shades of orange and purple. She observed the resilience of the people in their daily lives. Their homes were modest, yet vibrant, adorned with handmade decorations and flowering plants. The children ran barefoot through dirt roads, their laughter echoing through the hills. She reflected on how easily she had misjudged this country from afar. Wealth, she realized, was not always monetary. It was measured in connection, in the ability to find happiness in small moments, and in the generosity of spirit that permeated every interaction. Her mornings were spent helping in communal tasks, her afternoons exploring hidden waterfalls and dense forests nearby. She marveled at the way the rivers cut through limestone cliffs, forming natural pools that glistened like liquid sapphire. She took photos obsessively, but also found herself putting down the camera, choosing instead to soak in the scene fully. She learned the names of local plants, the calls of exotic birds, and how to distinguish the subtle flavors in tropical fruits she had never seen before. Every experience added layers to her understanding of the Philippines, and every interaction deepened her affection for the people she met. One day, she accompanied a local midwife to a nearby barangay to provide basic health education. She observed how the midwife moved with both authority and care, instructing mothers about hygiene, nutrition, and childcare. The community listened attentively, asking questions with humility and curiosity. She was struck by the dedication of these women, working tirelessly without much material reward, but with extraordinary pride in their role. It reminded her that the Philippines' strength was not in skyscrapers or GDP statistics, but in its people, their dedication, compassion, and communal spirit. Evenings often brought quiet moments of reflection. She would sit under a palm tree, watching the sunset bleed into the horizon, listening to the village settle into a calm rhythm. Crickets chirped, and the faint sounds of distant laughter carried through the warm air. She thought about the initial skepticism she had felt upon arrival, about the small and poor country she had imagined, and how it had transformed completely in just a few days. She understood that her surprise was not just at the beauty or the hospitality, it was at the depth of life here, at the vibrancy that existed in ways she had never encountered. She also began learning more Tagalog phrases, sometimes mangling them in ways that earned good-natured laughter from locals. "Kumain ka na?" became a favorite greeting she repeated endlessly, delighting children and adults alike. She started using "sige na" in jest, pasalubong when returning from small errands, and was corrected gently every time. She realized that language, much like the culture itself, was playful, forgiving, and deeply human. Each phrase she learned opened a door into understanding the values behind the words, the care embedded in simple gestures, and the shared joy of communication. By the second week, she was fully immersed. She had joined the morning market routines, helped with laundry done in communal streams, and even attempted to cook local dishes herself. She learned to make adobo, sinigang, and pancit, laughing heartily when her first attempts were too salty or overcooked. The locals cheered her on, offering tips with patience and warmth. She began to understand that this was a culture that thrived on encouragement, kindness, and shared experience rather than criticism. Every day was filled with laughter, learning, and unexpected moments of beauty. On weekends, she traveled to neighboring towns, exploring small islands and remote beaches. She discovered limestone caves, hidden lagoons, and secret waterfalls known only to locals. Each place seemed untouched by the tourist guides, a glimpse into the authentic soul of the country. She snorkeled in waters teeming with tropical fish, her blue eyes reflecting the vibrant colors around her. She realized that the Philippines' wealth was in these hidden treasures, in the way nature and humanity coexisted harmoniously, and in the stories carried by every smiling face she encountered. Her evenings became opportunities for storytelling. Around campfires, she listened as elders recounted legends of gods, heroes, and ancestors. She shared stories from Ukraine, finding connections in the universality of human experience. Children gathered at her feet, wide-eyed, as she described snowfalls, ice skating, and her small hometown. She noticed how the villagers were just as fascinated by her stories as she was by theirs. It was a mutual exchange of culture, a dance of understanding and connection that transcended language and geography. By the end of her month-long immersion, the beautiful Ukrainian woman was no longer an outsider. She had been adopted into multiple families, invited to every small gathering, and included in daily routines. She had laughed until her sides ached, eaten until she could barely move, and cried quietly during moments of reflection, moved by the generosity and resilience she had witnessed. She understood now why visitors were often stunned by the Philippines. The country's greatness was not in its size, wealth, or power, but in its heart, its people, and the effortless joy that colored every aspect of life. She boarded her flight back to Manila with a heavy heart, a collection of memories that would last a lifetime. She looked out at the islands below, their lush greenery, sparkling waters, and vibrant communities filling her with gratitude. The initial shock and surprise she had felt in those first 5 minutes had deepened into a profound appreciation for a nation that defied expectations at every turn. She knew she would carry the warmth, laughter, and lessons of the rural Philippines with her forever, a treasure more valuable than any souvenir or photograph. In the quiet hum of the airplane cabin, she reflected on how much she had grown. The Philippines had taught her patience, humility, and the importance of connection. It had shown her that wealth was measured not by possessions, but by love, community, and the courage to smile in the face of adversity. The country she had once underestimated had become, in a short span of time, a source of joy, inspiration, and a model for living fully and generously. She closed her eyes, a smile curling across her lips, knowing that the lessons of this small yet extraordinary country would shape her forever.